Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for today's webcast. I know I need a CMDB. Where do I start? My name is Kaylin Hensley, Marketing Coordinator with GSI. I'm also very pleased to welcome our main presenter, Joe Nicolosi. Joe is a ServiceNow Solutions Director with 20 plus years ITSM experience, delivers process and gap workshops, system architecture, pre-sales, and post-sales consulting, certified in Agile PM methodology, ServiceNow sales, and ServiceNow certified implementation specialist. Now, before we get started, I wanted to give you a chance to review our safe harbor statement. Now for a quick overview of today's meeting, which will last about 60 minutes. First, we will take a moment to go over a couple of housekeeping items as well as provide a brief company overview. Then I will turn it over to Joe to get into our main presentation, which will last about 40 minutes. Next, we'll take a minute to go over upcoming educational events, and then we'll wrap up with a 10-minute Q&A session. If you would like to submit a question, you can do so through the questions panel at the bottom of the GoToWebinar console window located on the right side of your screen. Please note that questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. So if you would like to minimize your GoToWebinar console during the presentation, just click the right-facing arrow key on the top left of the console. Clicking the left arrow key will return the console so that you can input your questions. Now I would like to give you a brief company overview of GSI. GSI is a full-service ServiceNow consulting organization. We were founded in 2004 and now have over 100 employees. We have offices nationwide and are recognized on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest-growing companies in the U.S. GSI specializes in project consulting, managed services, and other services, with all of our services backed with a 100% guarantee. GSI also provides a broad spectrum of business, functional, and technical consulting services for Oracle JD Edwards, Oracle NetSuite, Oracle Cloud, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and other enterprise applications. We also offer an extensive array of cloud hosting solutions for Oracle Cloud, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and JDE Cloud 9. Now I would like to turn things over to Joe for our main presentation and demo.
All right, thank you very much. Give me 1 second. All right. Okay, so thank you all for coming. We are going to talk about the configuration management database and kind of give you guys an idea of how to get started in your journey to better configuration management. All right, so that's the agenda. This is just a brief bio of me. Now here. Oh, it's going too fast. Hold on. All right. After the bio, got this image. So I included this image. It's actually a BMC image.
Hey, Joe, sorry to interrupt, but we are not seeing the image that you're trying to show.
What are you seeing?
We are just seeing the PowerPoint, but not in slideshow presentation mode.
How about now?
Nope, we are still seeing just the setup of the PowerPoint.
Okay. Oh, I got it now. Hold on. How's that?
There we go. We're on the intro.
Okay, good. All right, so this image. So this is actually an image put together by BMC. I included it because it really stresses the importance. They used to joke about this particular slide and image. They used to call it the Death Star. But the good thing about this is around here, around the outer circle, you've got all of these different ITIL and business processes. And here in the middle, that reactor core of the Death Star is where the CMDB and the configuration management system sits. So you can see how central it is to supporting all of these other business processes like problem, change, incident, not just the request and support, but plan and govern and monitor and operate. So all of these different processes can use the data in the CMDB in order to better perform their functions. So that image. So what is a CMDB? So this is ITIL parlance, right? So it's a database that contains all relevant details of configuration items and the important relationships between those configuration items. So what's a configuration item? So basically it's a component of infrastructure that's under the control of configuration management. Whereas that's not terribly helpful, but the idea is that the CMDB contains not only records of hardware and software, communication networks, locations, even people can be CIs within a CMDB because they are items that roll up to and support business services. So configuration item is an item in the CMDB. It could be a physical thing. It could be a logical thing, right? So the important thing to remember here is the difference between a CMDB and just an asset database, right, is that it holds relationships between these CIs. It's not really concerned with depreciation schedules and purchasing and requisition and that sort of stuff, but it's meant to show you the operational side of things. All right, so assets versus configuration management. So different process activities, but they overlap, right? Configuration management focuses on operational usage and logical relationships, while asset management focuses on things like financial and tracking the IT component through its life cycle. So things like the request, the procurement, the receiving, the stocking, the inventory, and the disposal of things, that's really part of asset management. Whereas in configuration management, we're worried about the deployment, monitoring it, supporting these things, making changes to them, that sort of stuff. All right. So a little thing about data. So the processes that use that data, if we go back to that Death Star thing, they can only be effective as the data that they have. So your data in your CMDB must be accurate, and in order to be accurate, it must be updated frequently, right? Configurations are constantly changing, so last week's correct data could be very, very old this week. So it's important to have clear data, and that data must be accurate and refreshed continuously. All right. So some guidelines for the CMDB, right? Reserve the CMDB for data that's important, that you want to track, that you want to secure, and importantly, that you want to perform changes against, right? You want to store important attributes of a CI in the CMDB and maybe federate to other, like maybe the asset store for other things like what PO number was this thing purchased on? What's the warranty expiration? What sort of contracts do I have? All of that is not really, that's important information, but it's not what you want to store with a CI in the CMDB, right? It's also important that you want to model your data based on the needs of the consumers. Who's going to use that data? Is incident management going to use that data? Yes. Well, the incident management process needs to know a few things in order to support it. Same things like change or problem. And the other point here is if nobody's going to consume a particular type of data, you don't necessarily need to track that in the CMDB. So the point here is to try to avoid loading everything you know about a particular CI into the CMDB, right? The CMDB is for sharing data across these different processes and applications so that incident management and change management, problem management can all access this data, right? So if only one of these processes is going to consume a particular type of data, store that data with that particular process instead of in the CMDB. Next, when you're modeling business services, and we'll get a little bit more into this, you want to be as granular as possible. You can include higher level services, but when you want to be as granular as possible with your business services. And you might consolidate lower level services with a hierarchy of business services, and that's going to help you understand the importance of individual CIs that are contained within that model. All right, so what are configuration items? So a computer system, it's part of your environment. You can configure it, and it has primary capability and domain name. So a computer system is very obvious. Obviously, that's a CI, right? But less obvious, even people can be part of a service model and thus can be part of the CMDB as a CI, right? Now, an operating system, right? That's separate from, I own Microsoft Office, right, or Microsoft Windows, but what is the actual CI that's in the CMDB is the particular installed instance of an operating system on a particular computer system, right? Microsoft Windows is part of your product catalog, sure, but it itself is not a CI, but the installed instances of Microsoft Windows are. And then you've got a business service, right? You could have different types of business services, technical application services. And they're a little bit more of a logical CI. They're not something that exists physically in your environment, but logically they're part of the CMDB. So what aren't configuration items? Obviously, an incident ticket, right? It's got some configurable attributes, but it's not really a direct part of the environment. It's just information about things like a computer system. And like I said, a software package itself is not a CI, but the installed instances of it are, right? So the software package is stored in your product catalog. A particular installed instance of Adobe Acrobat on my laptop is, right? And things like contracts. Contracts are configurable, but they're not really a direct part, and it's really just information about an entity. So a copier might have a service warranty or maintenance contract, right? And then you have things like events. So event is not a CI, but an event is something that could be related to a CI, or should be related to a CI. All right. So we want to talk about the life cycle CI. So when you're building out, or when you're starting to think about starting out with the CMDB, you need to define your configuration item lifecycle. When do we create the CIs? When are they made available for changing and reporting incidents and problems? How do they get created? What data sets are you going to have? You might have multiple data sets within your CMDB, so you're segregating out your CIs. How do they reconcile between the data sets? So if I have a particular computer system in one data set and a particular computer system in another, or the same computer system in another data set, how do I match those up? And when do we move CIs out? So when do CIs get created? You might answer, well, when they're deployed, or when they're first picked up by a discovery tool, when they join the domain, right? That's when they're available for changes and incidents and problems. Now, are they created manually, which would be a bit of a nightmare, or do you have some auto discovery tools? All right. So when you're thinking about your CMDB, you need to identify data providers and data consumers. Data providers are your different data sources that are going to feed your CMDB. You might get procurement applications. I've seen integrations into things like Ariba. So once an item is received, it's then integrated into the CMDB and added to the CMDB at that point. In red here, the reason why it's in red, we'll get to it later, is discovery tools. Discovery tools are a very good way of providing data for your CMDB. Software distribution systems, hey, we've installed this particular piece of software on this laptop. Let's note that in the CMDB. Legacy asset applications, you might have some other asset management tool that can provide some data to the CMDB. It won't provide you necessarily with relationship data, but you can get maybe some important attributes that incident or change management might want to see. And then you have also some security applications. Data consumers, it's going to use the data, and obviously the first bullet point here is service management applications, things like incident, problem, and change. Patch management, how do we know what out there needs to get this brand new patch from the software provider, right? Any reporting and data warehouses might like that data, and of course security applications can make very good use of CMDB data because you can potentially see some vulnerabilities with your infrastructure. All right, so you need to think about your data model. So much of this presentation is kind of geared to if you're starting from scratch, but we'll go into some more of the out-of-the-box stuff here in a little bit. So you want to classify your CMDBs. So it's a CI class is a collection or a group containing members regarding as having certain attributes or characteristics in common, right? And it forms the organizational structure of your CMDB. And typically you have parent classes that have child classes, right? And they are usually extensions or specializations of the parent classes, like this image shows. We have hardware. Within hardware, we have computers, network gear, printers, storage, UPSs. Within computers, we have personal computers, server, Unix, Linux, and Windows. Typically, these are set up in an inheritance. So I have a hardware class that has certain attributes that all hardware share. And then in that, I have a computer subclass that contains all of the attributes for hardware plus the attributes for computer. Right? And then underneath computer, we've got server and personal computer. So we got server. So the server class in our model here has all of the attributes that are in the computer class and all of the attributes that are in hardware. Then when we finally get down to Windows Server, those are specific attributes that are specific to Windows Server. They also have all of the server attributes, the computer attributes, and the hardware attributes. So it's setting up those classes and that basic inheritance from subclasses. And that's how you model your data. All right. So I said the importance of the CMDB is not so much as an asset store, but it's the relationships between them that are the most important thing, right? So CIs don't exist in a vacuum. You can have simple relationships, disk drive being a component of a computer system, or a little bit more complex when you're setting up dependency relationships. So relationships don't only exist between physical CIs, but between logical and conceptual CIs, such as software instances and services. And two CIs can have more than one relationship with each other. So an employee might own a server and also operate. So in this picture, we see we've got application 1 uses application 2 and connects to this Oracle 10G server, right? This Apache web server hosts application 1 and application 2, and this backup process, right, backs up this Oracle 10G database, right? So it's these relationships that really give you the power of the CMDB, right? And what you want to end up doing and end up having at the end is a service model. That's kind of where you're going. A service model, you could take it like a major business application like SAP, always a great example, right? So the business service may be ERP, the application might be SAP, and then SAP has a hardware layer, right? So you want to use something typical like that, some sort of web app or client server application, and then you start out by modeling the hardware layer, the computer systems that it runs on, right? And then it's got system software, and then things are logically grouped, and then you have the application layer. This is where the different SAP applications are, and then you can map all of that to product categorization, and then finally join that all up into one business service, your EIP service. That's what you offer the business, and it's supported by SAP, which runs on these servers and talks to these databases. So when you're building it, you want to build a reference model that can be used throughout the enterprise. So you don't want to build service models in a way that is only very specific to one small part of your business. You want to make sure that you use a consistent set of classes within the CI. You don't want to have random separate classes in this model that aren't part of other service models. It'll just make it harder to read. The important thing is they enable you to do service impact assessment. What happens if I take this server down? So this image here below is actually from a ServiceNow instance, and it's looking at the business service email, just a demo version of that, right? So we have, they have this set up with multiple business servers. So we start off with IT services, right? And then electronic messaging. Then we have our business service for email. Email on this one sits on IronMail SDO2, SDO1, and uses this Exchange server, right? These two servers talk to these Exchange servers, which sit on a mass storage device. So this is just a quick example of a business service model. This way I can know that if I bring down this SAN, right, I know it's going to end my email service. All right, so this part I'm going to step through some process steps to building a CMDB from scratch, right? There's a bunch of steps to this, but the idea is first you're assembling a project team, right? You're going to go out there and you're going to study how to build a CMDB, so obtain some knowledge. You need to agree on what the goals and the mission statement are for your CMDB, right? You need to review and define what the benefits are and build a business case, right? Once you've got the business case built, you can get a project sponsor approval. Hopefully you get approval for funding and resources, right? So you want to Identify, make sure you have a handle on what your governance requirements are for the data. You want to make sure you select some supporting best practices. Identify your specific requirements. Identify inventory and asset requirements, and define your service catalog. Define the CMDB requirements to support other processes. What does change management need to know about a CI? That sort of thing. You want to define the configuration item level and your service model. So what classes am I going to use to build my service model, and how much information about a given CI do I need? Right? You want to think of your CMDB as a card catalog. I don't know if you guys remember going into the library back in the day. Before we had Google, we had library card catalogs, so you would go and find that, and it's just contained, the relevant information about the book, right? The book's on the shelf, right? There's plenty of data in it, but you don't want to store the whole book in the card catalog, just enough to be able to find it and do your process with it. Right? So you want to make sure you define what sort of relationships you're going to have, what attributes you're going to need, and your service model blueprint. What are you going to do? At this point, you've got a consolidated IT service model blueprint, and you've got all of your requirements documented and approved. All right. Next, when you've gotten this far, you want to select your CMDB solution and tools. So this is step 16 is basically select CMDB solution. Plan for the population, select tools to automate that population, and then calculate your ROI, right? So at the end of this, you've purchased whatever tools you're going to need for the CMDB, and you're ready to start, right? Step 20 says construct your CMDB. So if you were just starting, just decided you're going to, write it all out in MySQL yourself, you would now do that, right? You create your lifecycle management process, you build any supporting processes that happens, and then you start populating that CMDB from your data sources. Train your team and users, right? And then you're in production with your CMDB, right? And then you want to continually improve your CMDB. Do you have the right attributes? Do you have the right relationships? Are you getting good usage out of that data, right? You've identified metrics and you're measuring against those critical targets. All right. So that's how you maybe start from scratch to build out a CMDB. But you don't need to. There are just about any service management product, ServiceNow, BMC, many others, already provide you with the CMDB structure, the relationship types, all of that. So it gives you, obviously you can buy an out-of-the-box CMDB solution. It's going to give you the structure already laid out. Typically, they come with already prepackaged integrations to some of the more popular data sources, things like SolarWinds or SCCM, that sort of stuff. They already contain the best practice classes, and data modeling is all already done for you. So it's bunch of no-brainer to go with an out-of-the-box CMDB where really your job is to populate it. Most of those are also customizable. So if you need to create a new class in the CMDB for something that isn't already there, I've created new CMDB classes for a number of different customers in different products for things that just are not common. Right? You have common data model, and then you have maybe some extra classes that are specific to your business, right? So that an out-of-the-box CMDB is really what you're probably going to look for. Now, if you already have a service management solution like ServiceNow or BMC Remedy, they have their own CMDBs and are able to be populated. The other thing you're going to want, it's almost a requirement because it makes life easier, is an auto discovery tool, right? So auto discovery tools are great in that they go out, scan your environment, and bring the data into the CMDB. So if you're going the BMC route, you have something like application dependency mapping, or ADDM, which does discovery, does all of the relationships. Now, and ServiceNow has their ServiceNow discovery tool. They also have Service Watch, a couple of different discovery options. Those tools will automatically run and populate your CMDB. So you're going to want some sort of auto discovery tool. Typically they're prepackaged, and typically they come with the out-of-the-box CMDB. So if you've got the BMC CMDB plus the ADDM is going to go ahead and populate your CMDB without too much effort. Same thing with ServiceNow. ServiceNow's discovery tool populates their CMDB without a whole lot of trouble. They're both agentless, and they'll go out and you feed them credentials, and they go out and they run scans, right? And return that data. All right. The other thing you're kind of looking for and you kind of want to avoid is standalone CMDB solutions. They become kind of an integration nightmare, especially when you're trying to do IT service management with using that data. So you want your incident tool to be able to have quick access to the CMDB, and your change tool to have access to that. If you've got a standalone CMDB solution, you're having to set up some pretty crazy integrations in order to really make use of that data. So I recommend solutions that are built, within that same platform that your IT service management tool is. All right. All right. So that's out-of-the-box CMDBs and auto discovery tools. So let's talk a little bit about discovery. All right. So there are sort of two types of discoveries. There's bottom-up, also known as horizontal discovery. Don't ask me why it's got those names. And then we've got top-down. So bottom-up, if you're looking at BMC's ADDM or ServiceNow's discovery tools, both of those are bottom-up. You feed it a subnet, right? It goes out there with the credentials that you've given it, and it's going to try to log into the machines that it finds on that subnet to run its scans. So log in, maybe run WMI scan on Windows, and have different scans to run for Linux. And you set all that up. So you feed it a subnet, it goes out, discovers it, and both of those tools function pretty much the same way as far as that kind of agentless discovery. Very useful, very powerful stuff. They're going to go out and discover that bottom part of the service model. So once that discovery has happened and you've got all of the infrastructure layers, all you have to do is maybe create your applications and your business services and then relate those up, and then you've got a service model. It's pretty handy. All right. The other kind is a top-down discovery. So this is a kind of neat way of doing things, and ServiceNow Service Watch, I believe it's called, does this. You feed it a URL for a business application, right, and some credentials, and it will discover from there. So it's taking you from the interface of the business application, and it's going to start discovering down from there. So you feed it ServiceNow or whatever the application you have in your system, and it's going to discover, oh, that's hosted on this Tomcat, which is hosted on this box, and this box talks to this one. Oh, look, there's a TNS names Aura file, so let's go through that. Oh, it's talking to these databases on these ports. with these IP addresses, and it's going to discover it that way. So 2 different types of discovery. You know, in a perfect world, you've got both, right? You're discovering it with from both directions, and that way you get a more complete thing. You're going to find once you start, if you go down the auto discovery route, and I highly recommend that you do, because really discovery is the way to keep your data refreshed. You're going to have situations where things are on your network that you didn't know were going to be on your network, or things are not discoverable. So you're going to have to go through a little bit of remediation to make sure that their proper credentials are deployed to those items so that the full scans can run. That happens across organizations. I see it a lot where we have to do remediation because our discovery tool is discovering things. Once you've got your service model set up and you can do impact analysis, you're sitting pretty. You're in the happy world of knowing your environment and your infrastructure. All right, that's it for the slide deck. So I just want to leave you with the idea that there is a whole lot of, theory into CMDBs, but it's not that daunting of a task when you have out-of-the-box CMDB products, right? That also include out-of-the-box discovery tools that will go out and populate those CMDBs. So a lot of customers come to the CMDB and they're overwhelmed and they're like, oh gosh, how am I going to do this? It's just too much. If you just start with an out-of-the-box tool and an auto-discovery tool, you're a good 85 to 90% of the way there once you get those discovery tools running. Save time from having to, build it out from scratch, which would be crazy. All right. I think we want to turn it over for some questions now.
All right, thanks, Joe. Let me cover just a few follow-up items, and then we'll move into our Q&A session. All right, Joe, and if you don't mind, just for a moment, to mute yourself just for a second, and then we'll bring you on for the Q&A.
I am muted.
All right. Our webcast today is part of GSI's free ongoing educational webcast series on ServiceNow. Our webcasts are listed on the screen. To view our most up-to-date schedule, please visit getgsi.com/ServiceNow webcasts. GSI provides extensive free educational resources for the ServiceNow community, including our weekly educational webcasts, online resource center where you can access our on-demand webcasts, white papers, etc., and on-site and virtual workshops. All right, I would like to remind everyone that if you would still like to submit a question, you can do so using the questions panel in the GoToWebinar console window on the right side of your screen. If you minimized your console earlier, please click the left arrow to redisplay the questions panel. All right, Joe, our first question comes from Kayla, who asks, what is the difference between CMDB and CMS?
Sure. So in ITIL v3, ITIL kind of introduced, kind of moving away from this idea of a CMDB and moving into the configuration management system, right? So it's kind of came about via ITIL v3, and the idea is that a configuration management system, right, is what maintains maybe one or more CMDBs. So you can imagine a situation where you might have multiple CMDB stores of attributes and relationships with other CIs, and the configuration management system is that overall governance platform.
Okay. All right, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Kayla. Our next question comes from James, who asks, how has CMDB evolved in order to handle the new dynamic virtual and cloud environments?
Yeah, so moving into the world of cloud, right? So CMDB is fully capable of storing, cloud information, right? The difficulty there is you may have an application out there in the cloud, and it could be moved from machine to machine continuously, based on whatever rules. There's a lot of movement and dynamic stuff within there. So most leading vendors offer cloud management solutions with their products, and the cloud management solutions automate that provisioning, right, within the same platform that holds the CMDB. So you can automate the information so that when the cloud moves, it's automatically updating the CMDB. So you're not running scans necessarily, you're just automating the updates as the cloud resources are provisioned.
Okay. Our next question comes from Robert, who asks, where would capabilities of a business service, subservice, come into play, which connects to multiple technical services to many?
So if I get your question right, what were the capabilities of a particular business service that is sort of an umbrella business service to multiple other services? It's really just a way to group them together in a logical framework, right?
Okay. All right, now I see that we've had several people asking if we will be able to provide a copy of the presentation today, and yes, we absolutely will. It will be on our website following this webcast today. Our next question comes from Greg. And he asks, have you seen successful integrations between ServiceNow as your ITSM and SCCM for discovery?
Absolutely. SCCM as a discovery tool is really good for getting your laptops and your desktops and the software that's installed on them. That's really good for enabling things in asset management, like software asset management and stuff like that, especially in ServiceNow. But yeah, there are many. ServiceNow has packaged integrations with SCCM that are pretty much plug and play. In the CMDB, they're useful, but it's not as useful as getting infrastructure discovery done, right? SCCM, not so good at giving you the relationships as a regular discovery tool can. So yes, getting integrations are easily done to SCCM, especially with ServiceNow. Easy to get that data in there. It's also with BMC. There's several packaged integrations there. Easy to get that data in, but I find that the SCCM data is a little bit more useful for asset management activities than necessarily change management.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, for things like change management, you really want that dependency model, that service model, so that you know, okay, I gotta bring down this particular server here. Who's going to be affected?
Okay. All right, and our last question comes from Mitch, who asks, how do you go about building controls to ensure that attributes not handled by discovery are appropriately managed and updated within a large environment?
Yeah, so you're speaking to something like reconciliation. So if you have multiple data sources, now you have to kind of treat people, a person opening up a CI, let's say in ServiceNow, and entering in some data manually, right, as a separate data source. And for that, you need to be able to whenever you have multiple data sources for a single item, right, you have to reconcile that, right? If I have someone come in and edit a CI and he changes the host name, right, well, I don't trust him to enter in the host name. I trust my discovery tool on host name. So enter what he wants. It's the discovery tool that's going to overwrite that. So you might have attributes that are manually updated that you trust your service text to enter. One good example of that is we have a customer who has mobile communication devices, right? And people are making service requests on those. They want to port their mobile phones. They want to upgrade them, that sort of stuff. We have a feed of these mobile devices coming in that we're trusting, but there's a step in that fulfillment process for porting a mobile phone that requires that the technician actually come in and enter in some information into the CI. So if you include the updates to the CMDB as part of a fulfillment process for a service request, that usually helps get it done when you're having actual manual entry. Other data sources that are not manual entry, maybe you're integrating into some asset data store. Again, you've got to do a reconciliation. What am I going to get from there? What attributes do I trust from there versus the attributes that I trust from my discovery tools? I hope that answered your question.
Okay. That appears to be the end of the questions. Thank you, Joe, and everyone for your questions today. As a follow-up from today's webcast, we ask that you complete a short 1-minute survey when you exit. You will be receiving an email with a link to our resource center on our website where you can access the recording from today's webcast, as well as a copy of the presentation. After today's webcast, we will do the drawing for the $25 Amazon gift card. Anyone who attended the entire webcast will be eligible, and we will notify the winner. If you have any follow-up questions, you can contact Joe or I, and we will get back to you. Our contact information is on the screen. Thanks again for attending our presentation, and have a great day.